I'm Amber Mitchell, 34 years old, and I never imagined I'd be standing in the foyer of my California mansion, staring at the two people who had broken my heart repeatedly, my parents. After 10 years of excluding me from every family gathering, they had the nerve to show up unannounced at my doorstep. The same people who told me my dreams were unrealistic now stood gawking at the physical manifestation of my success. Before I tell you what happened next, let me know where you're watching from. Hit subscribe if you've ever had to rebuild your life after family betrayal. Trust me, what I did next changed everything. Growing up in Westfield, Indiana, we were what most would consider a typical middle-class American family. Our modest 3-bedroom house on Maple Street was nothing special, but it was home. At least, it was supposed to be. From an early age, I realized I was different from other kids in my family. While most children were out playing, I was fascinated by the family computer, a bulky Dell that my father had purchased for work purposes only. I was always academically gifted, earning straight A's without much effort. By age 12, I had taught myself basic HTML and was creating simple websites. My 8th grade science teacher, Mrs. Johnson, called my parents in for a conference specifically to tell them I had extraordinary potential in STEM fields. My father, Richard, nodded politely during the meeting, but in the car ride home, he scoffed. "Computers are a nice hobby, Amber, but it's not a real career for someone like you," he said, eyes fixed on the road ahead. "You should focus on something practical, like teaching or nursing." My mother, Barbara, sat silently in the passenger seat, occasionally glancing back at me with an apologetic smile that never quite reached her eyes. That was our dynamic. Dad made proclamations, Mom silently complied, and I was expected to fall in line. Things were different for my younger brother Ethan. 3 years my junior, Ethan struggled in school but excelled at sports, particularly football. Dad never missed his games, proudly wearing Ethan's jersey number and bellowing his support from the bleachers. When Ethan brought home C's and D's, Dad would ruffle his hair and say, "School isn't for everyone, buddy. You've got other talents." The contrast in how we were treated wasn't subtle. When I brought home perfect report cards, they were merely expected. When I won the state mathematics competition in 10th grade, my father responded with, "That's nice, but don't let it go to your head." When I was accepted into every college I applied to, including several Ivy Leagues, my father's only comment was about the impracticality of student loans. My grandparents were different, though. Grandma and Grandpa Mitchell lived about an hour away in Indianapolis, and visiting them was my sanctuary. Grandpa had been an engineer, and he recognized my passion for technology. For my 15th birthday, while my parents gave me clothes I never asked for, my grandparents gifted me with my very own laptop. "Your mind is special, Amber," Grandpa told me, his eyes crinkling with pride. "Don't let anyone convince you otherwise." When I was 16, Grandpa passed away unexpectedly from a heart attack. At the funeral, while everyone consoled my father on his loss, I stood alone, feeling as though my biggest champion had disappeared. Grandma moved to Florida shortly after, and my lifeline to unconditional support was severed. Throughout high school, I poured myself into academics and coding projects. I created a scheduling app that the school administration actually implemented, and I started a girls' coding club that grew to 20 members by the time I graduated. Local newspapers covered both achievements. My parents didn't attend the ceremony where I received the Innovation Award, as it coincided with one of Ethan's football games. Senior year was when I set my sights on MIT. Their computer science program was legendary, and I knew that's where I belonged. My guidance counselor was enthusiastic about my chances, especially given my perfect SAT scores and portfolio of coding projects. When the thick acceptance package arrived, along with a substantial merit scholarship, I was ecstatic. I remember running into the living room where my parents were watching TV, the letter clutched in my hand. "I got in. I got into MIT," I announced, breathless with excitement. My father glanced up briefly. "That's in Massachusetts, right? That's too far. You should go to state like we discussed." "But Dad, it's MIT. And I got a scholarship. This is my dream." He shook his head. Dreams don't pay bills, Amber. Being practical does. Richard, my mother interjected softly, maybe we should discuss this. It is a prestigious school. He shot her a look that silenced her immediately. We've already decided. End of discussion. That night, I made a decision of my own. I was going to MIT, with or without their blessing. The scholarship covered most of the tuition, but not room and board. I had some savings from my part-time job at the local library, and I was determined to figure out the rest. 2 weeks before high school graduation, I received devastating news. My grandfather had left me a small inheritance that had been in a trust until I turned 18 or started college. It wasn't a fortune, about $15,000, but it would help immensely with my first year at MIT. However, as I soon discovered, my father, as executor of the will, had borrowed the money for Ethan's football training camp and other expenses. You don't need it anyway, he said dismissively when I confronted him. You're smart. You'll get more scholarships. That was the first major crack in my relationship with my parents, a fissure that would only widen with time. Despite their objections and the financial setback, I packed my bags that August. My mother drove me to the airport alone, my father and Ethan conspicuously absent. As we parted at the security checkpoint, she hugged me awkwardly. Your father does love you, Amber. He just shows it differently. I nodded, not trusting myself to speak. As I walked away, I couldn't help but think that if that was love, perhaps I was better off without it. Cambridge, Massachusetts might as well have been another planet compared to suburban Indiana. The MIT campus buzzed with an energy I'd never experienced before, brilliant minds from around the world, all passionate about innovation and discovery. For the first time in my life, I felt like I belonged. That's not to say it was easy. Without family financial support, I was on my own in ways most of my classmates weren't. While they ordered late-night pizza during coding sessions, I ate ramen in my dorm room. When they went home for long weekends, I picked up extra shifts at the campus coffee shop where I worked 20 hours a week. During semester breaks, I stayed on campus, securing a position as a research assistant that provided housing in exchange for work. Professor Catherine Williams noticed me during my second semester. I was taking her advanced algorithms course and had submitted a project that approached the problem from an angle she hadn't seen before. Ms. Mitchell, she said, holding me back after class one day, have you considered applying for the Undergraduate Research Opportunities Program? Your coding skills are exceptional. Under Professor Williams' mentorship, I thrived. She became the academic mother I'd never had, challenging me intellectually while providing the encouragement my parents had withheld. By the end of my sophomore year, we were collaborating on a security software project that was gaining attention in academic circles. Throughout this time, my communication with my family dwindled to occasional phone calls with my mother. The conversations were superficial: weather, local gossip, Ethan's continuing football career at State. When I tried to share my accomplishments, her responses were polite but unengaged. That's nice, dear. Did I tell you Ethan might be scouted for a minor league team? During winter break of my junior year, I decided to go home, hoping that time and distance had softened my father's stance. I had recently won a prestigious coding competition, and our security software project had received a substantial development grant. I was finally doing things even my father couldn't dismiss. The house on Maple Street hadn't changed, but I had. As I sat at the familiar kitchen table, I eagerly shared my news, showing them articles about our project in tech publications. My father skimmed the material with a frown. So you're still doing the computer thing? Dad, this isn't just a computer thing. Our software could revolutionize how companies protect sensitive data. We've already got interest from venture capitalists. He pushed the papers back toward me. Sounds risky to me. All these tech startups failing left and right. Ethan's got a real opportunity with this football thing. Stable. Dependable. My mother chimed in, speaking of Ethan, he'll be home tomorrow. We're having a family dinner with your aunts and uncles. They're all so excited about his prospects. That's great, I said, trying to mask my hurt. What time should I be ready? An uncomfortable silence fell. My father cleared his throat. Well, it's really more of a celebration for Ethan. Just immediate family and your aunts and uncles. You understand. I didn't understand. I was immediate family. I was their daughter. Yet somehow, I wasn't included in a family dinner happening in my own childhood home while I was there. That night, I lay in my old bedroom, staring at the glow-in-the-dark stars still stuck to the ceiling, and made a decision. I would not keep setting myself up for rejection. I would not beg for scraps of affection from people who couldn't celebrate my accomplishments. The next morning, I booked an earlier flight back to Boston. My mother seemed relieved when I told her, offering only a token protest. But you just got here. I have work to do, Mom. Important work. With people who actually value what I do. She flinched slightly but didn't argue. As I dragged my suitcase to the waiting Uber, I knew I wouldn't be coming back anytime soon. Back at MIT, I threw myself into my work with renewed determination. If my family couldn't see my worth, I would make sure the rest of the world did. Professor Williams noticed the change in me. Channeling pain into productivity, Amber, she asked during one late-night lab session. I looked up, surprised by her perception. Is it that obvious? She smiled kindly. Only to someone who's been there. Just remember, success is a wonderful goal, but it's not a healing agent. Her words stayed with me, but I wasn't ready to process them yet. Instead, I focused on building a life that didn't depend on my family's approval. I formed deep friendships with classmates Chelsea Wong and Marcus Diaz, who became my chosen family. We spent holidays together, supported each other through academic challenges, and dreamed about the companies we would someday build. By senior year, the prototype of our security software was turning heads in the tech industry. Professor Williams helped us secure meetings with potential investors, and we were featured in a technology spotlight in the Boston Globe. I sent a copy to my parents, along with a brief note. My mother called a week later. We saw the article. Your father says it's interesting. Interesting. Not impressive, not amazing, interesting. The same word you might use to describe an unusual cloud formation or a mildly entertaining documentary. Thanks, Mom, I replied, trying to keep the bitterness from my voice. How's Ethan? The conversation predictably turned to my brother's latest achievements. I learned he'd been signed to a minor league team and that my parents had taken out a second mortgage to invest in a sports bar he wanted to open with friends. After graduation, I received multiple job offers from top tech companies. I accepted a position at CyberShield in San Francisco, partly for the opportunity and partly for the distance it would put between me and Indiana. Before leaving the East Coast, I visited my grandmother in Florida. Unlike my parents, she was genuinely proud of my accomplishments. Your grandfather would be over the moon, she told me, eyes misty with tears. You keep soaring, my girl. With her blessing and a small additional inheritance she insisted on giving me, your grandfather always meant for you to have it. I headed west to begin the next chapter of my life, further from my family in distance, and soon, in every other way that mattered. San Francisco embraced me in ways Indiana never had. The fog-laden hills, the eclectic neighborhoods, the palpable sense of innovation in the air, it felt like home almost immediately. At CyberShield, I was assigned to their financial security team, developing protection systems for banking clients. My apartment was tiny, a studio in the Mission District that cost more than a 3-bedroom house in my hometown, but it was mine. I decorated it with abstract art and filled bookshelves with technical manuals and science fiction novels. On my desk sat a single-framed photo, me with Chelsea and Marcus at MIT graduation. I had no family pictures. The first 6 months, I called home every Sunday. The conversations followed a predictable pattern: pleasantries, updates on Ethan, vague questions about my computer job that revealed they hadn't retained any details from our previous calls, and an eventual awkward goodbye. Gradually, the calls became less frequent, every other week, then monthly, then on holidays and birthdays only. Meanwhile, my career was accelerating faster than I dared hope. My innovations in encryption protocols earned me a promotion to team leader after just 18 months. The young developers I now managed were brilliant and driven, and together we created solutions that saved our clients millions in potential security breaches. I formed new friendships, particularly with Chelsea, who had also moved to San Francisco to work for a biotech firm, and with Marcus, who was now at a startup in Oakland. We met weekly for Sunday brunches that became my real family tradition. For my 26th birthday, Chelsea convinced me to splurge on a real celebration. "You've never had a proper party," she insisted. "Let's do it right." We rented out a small rooftop bar in Soma. About 40 people came, colleagues, friends, even Professor Williams, who happened to be in town for a conference. My parents sent a generic store-bought card with a $50 check and their regrets that they couldn't attend due to one of Ethan's games. I told myself I wasn't disappointed. That night, buzzed on expensive champagne and surrounded by people who genuinely celebrated my existence, I shared an idea I'd been nurturing for months. "I think I'm going to start my own company," I announced to Chelsea and Marcus as we overlooked the glittering city. I'd been developing a new security framework that could change how small businesses protect their data. Chelsea raised her glass. "To Amber Mitchell, future tech mogul." Marcus grinned. "Need a marketing director?" I'm about ready to jump ship at my place. Their immediate support was everything I'd never gotten from my family. 3 months later, SecureCore was born in a small office space we rented in Oakland. Marcus joined as Chief Marketing Officer, and we hired 2 junior developers I'd worked with at CyberShield. The first year was brutal. We bootstrapped everything, pouring our savings and countless hours into developing our product. I lived on ramen again, downsized to an even smaller apartment, and worked 16-hour days. My calls home became rare, though I still sent money occasionally when my mother mentioned financial strains. Ethan's bar wasn't doing well, and they had medical bills from my father's minor heart surgery. 18 months in, we were running dangerously low on funds when Techstars, a prestigious accelerator program, accepted us. The $120,000 investment breathed new life into SecureCore, and the mentorship transformed our business model. By the end of the program, we had secured our first major clients and additional seed funding. As the company grew, so did my confidence. I was no longer the overlooked daughter seeking validation, I was a respected CEO making waves in the tech security space. We expanded to a proper office in San Francisco, hired a team of 20, and developed a reputation for exceptional service and innovation. On my 30th birthday, I closed on my first real estate purchase, a modest but beautiful condo in Pacific Heights with a view of the Golden Gate Bridge. The same week, I received a call from my mother. "Ethan's bar is struggling," she said after minimal small talk. "Your father and I have helped as much as we can, but our retirement fund is nearly depleted. Is there any way you could?" I agreed to send money, $5,000, more out of habit than genuine desire to help. 2 weeks later, scrolling through Facebook, I saw photos that made my stomach drop, a Mitchell family reunion at my uncle's lake house. There was my extended family, aunts, uncles, cousins I hadn't seen in years, along with my parents and Ethan, all smiling around a banner that read Annual Mitchell Gathering Year 5. 5 years. They'd been doing this for 5 years, and I'd never been invited. Not once. I called my mother immediately. "I just saw the pictures from the family reunion." A pause. "Oh, that. It was just a small get-together. The banner said Year 5, Mom. You've been doing this for 5 years?" Another pause. "Well, yes, but we didn't think you'd want to come all the way from California for something so minor." "You never asked me, Mom." "Not once. You're so busy with your computer work, Amber. Always too busy for family." The irony was breathtaking. I ended the call shortly after, a cold clarity settling over me. The money I had sent them over the years, at least $30,000 in total, had funded family gatherings I wasn't welcome to attend. Despite this revelation, I continued to achieve milestone after milestone. Securcore secured a major contract with a Fortune 500 company. We expanded internationally, opening a small office in London. Industry publications began featuring our work, and I was invited to speak at conferences. The final straw came a year later. Business Insider ran a profile on me titled Security Savant. How Amber Mitchell is revolutionizing data protection. It was the first major media coverage that detailed not just Securcore's success but my personal journey as well. The day after it published, my father called, the first time he'd initiated contact in years. "Interesting article," he said, his voice gruff. "Didn't realize your little computer project was doing so well." "It's not a little computer project, Dad. It's a multi-million-dollar company." "Well, that's good timing. Ethan's got this new business idea, sports training facility for kids. Real potential. But he needs investors. Since you've got all this money now." I gripped the phone tighter. "Are you serious? After years of dismissing my work, excluding me from family events, now you're calling because you think I can bankroll Ethan's latest scheme? Now listen here," his voice hardened, "family helps family. Your mother and I sacrificed everything for you kids. The least you could do is help your brother out when you're clearly doing well for yourself. It's just luck anyway, being in the right place at the right time." Luck. All my years of hard work, all the nights I went without sleep, all the risks I took, reduced to luck by the man whose approval I had once desperately craved. "I'll think about it," I said finally, not wanting to argue further. Against my better judgment, I agreed to fly home with a check for $50,000, more than enough to give Ethan's business a solid start. Perhaps, I thought naively, this could be the beginning of a new relationship with my family. Perhaps finally achieving significant success would make them see me. I was wrong. The moment my Uber pulled up to the familiar house on Maple Street, I knew something was different. The driveway was full of cars, at least 8 or 9 vehicles I didn't recognize. The front door was decorated with balloons, and I could hear laughter and music from inside. Confused, I wheeled my suitcase up the front walk and knocked. My mother answered, her smile faltering when she saw me. "Amber. You're early. We weren't expecting you until tomorrow." Before I could respond, my father appeared behind her. "Is that Amber? Thought you weren't coming until..." He stopped, glancing nervously over his shoulder. "What's going on?" I asked, stepping past them into the foyer. That's when I saw it, the dining room transformed for a celebration, extended family members milling about, a cake on the table with "Congratulations, Ethan," written in blue icing. My cousin Megan spotted me first. "Amber? Oh my God, no one told us you were coming too." A hush fell over the gathering as people noticed me standing there, suitcase still in hand. My Aunt Susan hurried over, giving me an awkward hug. "What a surprise. Richard, Barbara, you didn't tell us Amber was joining us for Ethan's party." My father cleared his throat. "She's just in town briefly. For business." I stood frozen, the pieces falling into place. This wasn't just a random family gathering, it was one of their regular reunions, time to celebrate something for Ethan. And they hadn't told me. Again. "How often do you do this?" I asked quietly, looking directly at my mother. She couldn't meet my eyes. "Do what, honey?" "These gatherings. These family reunions." "How often?" My Uncle Bob, always oblivious to tension, chimed in cheerfully. "First Sunday of every month. Been that way for years now. Best Mitchell tradition ever started. Every month. 4 years. While I called on holidays, sent money when asked, and believed they just weren't the type for frequent family gatherings." Ethan emerged from the kitchen, a beer in hand. "Amber? What are you doing here?" His tone wasn't hostile, just genuinely surprised, which somehow made it worse. "I came to help with your new business venture," I said flatly. "Dad called, said you needed investors for a sports training facility." Confusion crossed his face. "Training facility? Oh, that. Yeah, we discussed it, but I'm going with the sports bar expansion instead. Using the money from mom and dad. I turned to my father. You said the bar was failing. He shifted uncomfortably. It was. Now we're expanding it. Better location, bigger space. With what money? I asked, though I already knew the answer. My mother touched my arm. Amber, perhaps we should discuss this privately. Why? I looked around at the family members watching our exchange with uncomfortable expressions. Is it a secret that you've been taking money from me for years while excluding me from family gatherings? Is it a secret that you told me Ethan's business was failing when you were actually planning to expand it? Is any of that a secret, Mom? Now listen here, my father started, his face reddening. No one excluded you. You chose to move across the country. You chose to focus on your career instead of family. Don't act like you're the victim here. I laughed, a hollow sound. I'm not a victim, Dad. I'm just a fool. A fool who kept hoping her family might eventually be proud of her. A fool who kept sending money to people who couldn't even be bothered to invite her to monthly family gatherings. I reached into my purse and pulled out the check I'd brought, $50,000 made out to Ethan Mitchell. With deliberate slowness, I tore it into pieces, letting them flutter to the floor. Amber, my mother gasped. I'm done, I said quietly. I'm done trying to buy my way into this family. I'm done hoping you'll suddenly see me. I'm done pretending that this, I gestured around at the gathering, isn't exactly what it looks like, a family that functions perfectly fine without me. I turned to leave, but Ethan stepped forward, his expression a mix of guilt and indignation. So that's it? You show up after years, throw a tantrum because we're having a party, and storm out? Real mature, sis. I looked at my brother. The golden child who had never had to prove his worth, never had to fight for attention or approval. This isn't about the party, Ethan. This is about a lifetime of being treated like I don't matter. And you know what? I finally believe you. I don't matter, not here, not to any of you. With that, I wheeled my suitcase out the door, ignoring my mother's calls to come back. In the Uber back to the airport, I blocked their numbers, one by one. It was time to accept what I had known deep down for years, the family I was born into would never be the family I needed. The flight back to San Francisco was a blur. I remember staring out the window at the clouds below, feeling oddly hollow yet somehow lighter. There's a peculiar freedom in finally letting go of a hope you've carried for too long. I threw myself into work with renewed intensity. Securcore was growing rapidly, and the constant demands of scaling a successful startup left little time for dwelling on personal pain. But the walls I'd carefully constructed began to crack one evening when Chelsea found me alone in the office at midnight, staring blankly at my computer screen. Okay, that's enough, she declared, closing my laptop. You've been working 16-hour days for 2 weeks straight. You barely speak during meetings. Something's wrong, and we're going to talk about it. Over cheap Chinese food ordered to the empty office, I finally shared everything, the family reunion, the lies about Ethan's business, the years of exclusion that I'd tried to rationalize away. I feel so stupid, I concluded, pushing rice around with my chopsticks. I kept thinking if I just achieved enough, they'd finally see me. If I just helped enough, they'd finally include me. Chelsea reached across the table and squeezed my hand. You're not stupid, Amber. You're human. We all want to be loved by our families. But sometimes the people who are supposed to love us unconditionally just don't know how. The next day, she handed me a business card for Dr. Sarah Levine, a therapist specializing in family estrangement issues. Promise me you'll call her, Chelsea said. Success is great, but healing is better. Reluctantly, I made an appointment. I expected to hate therapy, to resent being asked to dissect painful memories and emotions I'd rather ignore. Instead, I found it surprisingly liberating. Dr. Levine never tried to convince me to reconcile with my family or to just get over it. Instead, she helped me understand the dynamics that had shaped our relationships and, more importantly, how those dynamics had shaped me. "You've spent your life trying to earn love that should have been freely given," she observed during one session. "That creates patterns that can affect all your relationships, not just those with your family." She was right. I had few close friends beyond Chelsea and Marcus. I threw myself into work because achievement was the only way I knew to feel worthy. I kept people at a distance, afraid that if they truly knew me, they'd find me as dismissible as my family had. Healing wasn't linear. There were setbacks, nights when I'd draft emails to my parents that I never sent, days when a random family photo on social media would send me into a spiral of self-doubt. But gradually, I began to build a life centered around genuine connections rather than achievement as validation. I implemented a strict 40-hour workweek policy at Securcore, not just for myself but for all employees. "Burnout isn't a badge of honor," I told my leadership team. "Neither is sacrificing your personal life for work." I joined a hiking group, took cooking classes, adopted a golden retriever named Einstein from a local shelter. I started saying yes to social invitations I would have previously declined in favor of working late. And then I met David. He was a software engineer who had recently moved to San Francisco from Seattle. We matched on a dating app, and our first date, coffee at a small cafe in Hayes Valley, turned into a 6-hour conversation that meandered from tech ethics to favorite sci-fi novels to childhood dreams. "My parents wanted me to be a doctor," he confessed over our third round of espresso. "They're still slightly disappointed I only designed software that helps actual doctors save lives." I laughed, feeling an immediate kinship. Family expectations are fun, aren't they? Unlike previous relationships that I'd sabotaged with emotional unavailability or workaholic tendencies, I approached dating David with intentional openness. When he asked about my family, I was honest rather than deflective. When insecurities surfaced, I acknowledged them instead of burying them in work. 6 months into our relationship, Securcore secured a major round of funding that valued the company at $200 million. The same week, I closed on a house, a beautiful modern home in the Berkeley Hills with panoramic views of the bay. It was larger than I needed, but after years of cramped apartments, I wanted space to breathe, to entertain, to build a life. The house became a project of love. I worked with an interior designer who helped transform the space into something that felt uniquely mine: warm modern aesthetics with splashes of color, walls lined with books, art from local artists I'd met through various community events. As Securcore continued to grow, I made a decision that surprised many in my professional circle. I started a foundation focused on providing technology education to underprivileged kids. The Mitchell Opportunity Foundation, named after my supportive grandparents, not my parents, partnered with schools in low-income areas to provide equipment, curriculum, and mentorship programs. "Why divert focus now?" a fellow CEO asked at a networking event. "You could be building the next tech giant." I smiled. Because success is about more than market cap. It's about creating something meaningful. The foundation work was deeply satisfying in ways that business success alone had never been. Watching young people discover their potential, particularly girls who reminded me of my younger self, healed parts of me I hadn't realized were still broken. My chosen family expanded as well. Chelsea and her partner became regular fixtures at my dinner table. Marcus and his boyfriend often joined us. David's sister moved to San Francisco and quickly became one of my closest friends. We created our own traditions. Thanksgiving potlucks where everyone brought a dish representing their heritage, New Year's Eve game nights that lasted until dawn, summer barbecues that spilled from my deck into the garden. 2 years after we met, David proposed during a private picnic at Land's End, with the Golden Gate Bridge in the background. The ring was his grandmother's, a vintage emerald that she had insisted he give to the one who makes you better. "You make me better," he said simply, holding the ring out to me. "You make everything better." Our wedding was intimate. 60 people gathered in the botanical garden, followed by a reception at a small restaurant owned by a friend. No one from my biological family attended, though I had sent invitations after much deliberation. My mother called to decline, citing my father's health concerns about traveling. I chose to believe her, though part of me wondered if it was just another excuse. Chelsea was my maid of honor. Marcus officiated the ceremony. David's parents welcomed me with a warmth that still sometimes catches me off guard. His mother hugged me tightly at the rehearsal dinner. "We're so happy you're joining our family," she whispered. "You're exactly who we hoped David would find." As we exchanged vows beneath flowering cherry trees, I realized that family isn't about DNA or obligation. It's about who chooses to stand beside you, who celebrates your joy and holds you in your pain. It's about love freely given, not conditionally earned. The life I built after cutting ties with my biological family wasn't perfect, no life is. But it was authentic, filled with relationships based on mutual respect and genuine affection. I no longer measured my worth by achievements or acquisitions, though both continued to accumulate. Instead, I valued the moments of connection, the laughter shared over dinner tables, the quiet contentment of Sunday mornings with David and Einstein. 3 years into our marriage, I had created a life so full and rich that the absence of my biological family, while occasionally poignant, no longer felt like a gaping wound. I was whole without them. Complete. Loved. Which is why, when my home security system alerted me to visitors that Sunday morning, I was utterly unprepared for the faces I saw on the video feed, my parents, standing nervously at my front door after 10 years of silence. It was one of those perfect California mornings, sunlight streaming through the windows, the scent of fresh coffee filling the kitchen, Einstein dozing at my feet while I read the Sunday paper. David was in the home office, catching up on emails before we headed out for our weekly farmers market ritual. The sharp chime of the doorbell cut through the tranquility, startling Einstein from his nap. It was early, not yet 9, and we weren't expecting company. "Can you see who that is?" David called from the other room. I pulled out my phone and opened the security app, expecting to see a delivery person or perhaps one of our neighbors. Instead, I felt a physical jolt of shock as I stared at the video feed. There, standing awkwardly on our front porch, were my parents. 10 years. It had been 10 years since I'd last seen them, standing in their foyer as I walked away from the family reunion I hadn't been invited to. 10 years of building a life without them, of holidays and celebrations and milestones marked by their absence. 10 years of healing from the pain of their rejection. And now, without warning, here they were, at my home, the sanctuary I'd created with David, the space where I felt most secure. They looked older, of course. My father's hair had gone completely gray, and he seemed somehow diminished, his once imposing frame slightly stooped. My mother's face showed new lines, her expression anxious as she glanced between the door and my father. "Who is it?" David asked, coming into the kitchen. He looked over my shoulder at the phone screen, his body tensing as he immediately understood the significance of the visitors. "Are those your parents?" I nodded, unable to find words as a storm of emotions crashed through me, shock, anger, curiosity, and beneath it all, that old, familiar ache of longing that I thought I'd finally outgrown. "What do you want to do?" David asked gently, his hand warm on my shoulder. The doorbell rang again. "I don't know," I admitted. I never thought. I never expected to see them again. David squeezed my shoulder. "You don't have to answer if you're not ready. They showed up without warning after 10 years. You don't owe them anything, Amber." He was right. I didn't owe them my time or attention. I could simply ignore the doorbell, go about my Sunday, pretend they had never appeared. But even as I considered this option, I knew I wouldn't take it. Not because they deserved a response, but because I deserved closure. "I'm going to talk to them," I decided, standing up. "I want to know why they're here." David studied my face. "Do you want me with you?" I hesitated, then nodded. "Stay close, but let me handle it. I need to do this on my own terms." Taking a deep breath, I moved toward the front door, Einstein padding loyally behind me. Through the side window, I could see my parents conferring quietly, my father checking his watch, my mother smoothing her already immaculate hair, nervous gestures I remembered from childhood. I took another moment to center myself, remembering Dr. Levine's advice about establishing boundaries in difficult interactions. Then, straightening my shoulders, I opened the door. The three of us stared at each other in silence. Up close, the changes in them were even more apparent. My father had lost weight, his expensive golf shirt hanging loosely on his frame. My mother's hands fidgeted with her purse strap, her knuckles swollen slightly with the beginning stages of arthritis. "Amber," my mother finally said, her voice wavering. You look wonderful. What are you doing here?" I asked, my tone neutral but firm. "How did you even find my address?" My father cleared his throat. "Your company website. It listed Berkeley as the headquarters, and then we hired He stopped at my mother's warning glance. "We wanted to see you." "After 10 years? Why now?" They exchanged uncomfortable looks. My mother attempted a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "Can we come in?" "It's a long story, and we've come a long way." I considered refusing, making them state their purpose on the doorstep. But curiosity won out over caution. 15 minutes, I said, stepping back to allow them entry. "I have plans this morning." They followed me into the living room, their eyes widening as they took in the soaring ceilings, the wall of windows overlooking the bay, the tasteful furnishings that had cost more than their entire house. Einstein stayed close to my side, regarding the strangers with cautious interest. "Beautiful home," my mother murmured. "Is this all yours?" "Mine and David's," I replied, gesturing to where he stood in the kitchen doorway. "My husband." My father nodded stiffly in David's direction but made no move to introduce himself. My mother offered a small, uncertain wave. "Please, sit," I said, indicating the sofa while I took the armchair opposite. Einstein settled at my feet, a warm, reassuring presence. "Now, why are you here?" They perched awkwardly on the edge of the sofa, looking out of place amid the understated luxury of my home. For a moment, I saw them through an outsider's eyes, an aging Midwestern couple, conventional and unremarkable, sitting in a house that represented everything they had once dismissed as unrealistic ambition. My father spoke first, his voice lacking the authoritative tone I remembered. "We wanted to reconnect. It's been too long, and we're not getting any younger." It was a non-answer, vague and evasive. The old Amber might have accepted it, grateful for any crumb of attention. But I wasn't that person anymore. "That doesn't explain why now, after 10 years of silence," I pressed. "What specifically brought you to my doorstep today?" My mother jumped in. "We've been following your success, Amber. We've seen the articles about your company. We're proud of what you've accomplished." "Are you?" I couldn't keep the skepticism from my voice. "Because the last time we spoke, Dad called my success luck. Before that, it was a computer hobby and unrealistic. So forgive me if I'm having trouble believing your sudden pride." My father's jaw tightened, that familiar expression of irritation crossing his face before he visibly controlled it. "People can change their minds," he said. "Maybe we were wrong about your career path." The reluctant admission should have felt vindicating. Instead, it just highlighted how little they knew me. My career wasn't a path. It was a passion, a calling, something that had brought me fulfillment and purpose. Their belated acknowledgement felt hollow, too little too late. "I appreciate that," I said anyway, deciding to be gracious. "But I still don't understand why you're here now, after all this time." They exchanged another look, a silent communication passing between them. My mother nodded slightly, and my father sighed. "We need your help, Amber," he finally admitted. "Financial help." And there it was, the real reason for their sudden appearance in my life after a decade of absence. Not reconciliation. Not genuine regret. Money. I should have felt angry, but instead, a strange calm settled over me. The final illusion had been shattered. "I see," I said quietly. "Tell me what happened." "It's a long story," my father began, his eyes fixed on the expensive rug beneath his feet rather than meeting my gaze. "I have 15 minutes, I reminded him, glancing at my watch. I suggest you get to the point. He cleared his throat, discomfort evident in his rigid posture. The economy's been tough the last few years. My construction business went under about 3 years ago. We tried to keep afloat, took out some loans. Your father mortgaged the house, my mother interjected softly. We thought it was temporary. That things would turn around. And Ethan's sports bar? I asked, remembering the expansion they'd mentioned during our last encounter a decade ago. My father's expression hardened. Failed within 2 years. Lost everything we invested. Which was how much, exactly? 200,000, he admitted reluctantly. Our retirement savings. I raised an eyebrow but said nothing, waiting for them to continue. My mother's fingers twisted anxiously in her lap. Then Ethan had some problems. Gambling. He got in deep with some people. Borrowed money he couldn't repay. Let me guess, I said, connecting the dots. You covered his debts. My father nodded stiffly. He's our son. We couldn't let him get hurt. The irony was almost too much to bear. I took a slow, measured breath before responding. So after a decade of no contact, after excluding me from family gatherings for years, after dismissing my career and my achievements, you've come to ask me for money because you gave everything to Ethan and now have nothing left. My mother flinched at the bluntness of my summary. It sounds terrible when you put it that way. Is there a better way to put it? I asked, genuinely curious. We're family, Amber, my father said, an edge entering his voice. Family helps family. The familiar phrase, the same one he'd used 10 years ago when asking me to fund Ethan's business venture, ignited a spark of anger I thought I'd extinguished long ago. Family helps family, I repeated slowly. That's interesting coming from you, Dad. Where was that sentiment when I needed help with college? Or when I was working 3 jobs to make ends meet in San Francisco? Or when you were having monthly family gatherings I wasn't invited to? We didn't think you'd want to come all that way, my mother said weakly, recycling the same excuse from years ago. You never asked, I pointed out. Not once in 10 years did you call to say, Amber, we miss you, we'd love to see you. Not once did you reach out except when you needed money for Ethan. My father's face flushed. You're the one who moved across the country. You're the one who was too busy with your fancy career to visit more than once every few years. I visited as often as I could afford to in the beginning, I corrected him calmly. And later, when I could afford more frequent trips, I stopped coming because it was abundantly clear I wasn't welcome. Remember the family reunion I walked in on? The one celebrating Ethan that no one bothered to tell me about? The memory surfaced with unexpected vividness, standing in the doorway with my suitcase, seeing the surprised faces of relatives who hadn't known I was coming, the awkward silence that fell over the gathering. That was a misunderstanding, my mother insisted. Was it? Or was it just one more instance of me being an afterthought in this family? They didn't answer directly. Instead, my father shifted tactics. Look, we made mistakes. We admit that. But we're in a bad situation now, and we need help. The bank is foreclosing on the house. We have nowhere to go. I studied them, these people who shared my DNA but who had never truly seen me, never valued me for who I was rather than what I could provide. How much do you need? I asked. Hope flickered across their faces. 300,000 would clear the mortgage and give us enough to start over, my father said, gaining confidence. We could get a small condo, something manageable until we get back on our feet. I nodded, processing the figure. It was a substantial sum, but one I could easily afford. The question wasn't whether I could help them, but whether I should. And Ethan? Where is he in all this? My mother's eyes darted away. He's getting help. For his gambling. He's in a program. That you're paying for? My father shifted uncomfortably. He needs support right now. I stood up, needing to move, to think. Einstein followed, staying close as I walked to the window overlooking the garden David and I had meticulously designed together. Do you know what I remember most about growing up? I asked, not turning to face them. It's not the criticism or the lack of support, though there was plenty of both. It's the feeling of being invisible. Of achieving something remarkable only to have it dismissed or ignored. Of watching Ethan receive unconditional love and support while I had to earn every scrap of approval. I turned back to face them. I used to think if I just achieved enough, you'd finally see me. If I just became successful enough, you'd be proud. If I just helped enough, I'd finally be worth including. But that's not how love is supposed to work. My mother's eyes filled with tears. We do love you, Amber. Maybe you do, in your way, I conceded. But it's always been conditional. And now you're here, asking for help, but not because you've had a change of heart or because you genuinely want to repair our relationship. You're here because you need something from me. My father started to protest, but I held up a hand. I'm not finished. I've spent years in therapy working through the damage caused by feeling like I was never enough for my own family. I built a life filled with people who value me for who I am, not what I can provide. I've learned that real love doesn't come with conditions or expectations. I paused, collecting my thoughts. I'm not going to give you $300,000. My father's face darkened. So that's it? You're going to let your parents lose their home when you're sitting here in a mansion? No, I replied evenly. I'm going to offer you something more valuable than money. I'm going to offer you resources to address the real issues. I walked to the desk in the corner of the living room, took out a notepad, and began writing. This is the name of an excellent financial counselor who specializes in helping people rebuild after bankruptcy. And this is a family therapist who works with parents of adult children. I added a third name. This is a specialist in gambling addiction who can help you better understand how to support Ethan without enabling him. I handed them the paper. I'll pay for 6 months of sessions with each of these professionals. Not as a loan, as a gift. What happens after that is up to you. My mother took the paper, looking bewildered. But the house? I can't fix this for you, I said gently but firmly. Giving you money without addressing the underlying issues would just be a temporary solution. You need to learn financial management skills. You need to understand healthy family dynamics. You need to stop enabling Ethan's destructive behaviors. My father stood abruptly. We didn't come here for a lecture or for therapy referrals. We came because we need concrete help. This is concrete help, I insisted. It's just not the kind you were expecting. So you'll let us become homeless out of spite, he challenged. I sighed. I'm not spiteful, Dad. I'm practical, something you always claimed to value. If you're truly facing homelessness, I'll pay for a modest apartment for 1 year while you work with these professionals. But the money goes directly to the landlord, not to you, and it's contingent on you actually attending the sessions. He stared at me, a complex mixture of emotions crossing his face, anger, shame, and perhaps a reluctant respect. You've changed, he finally said. Yes, I agreed. I have. I'm not the little girl desperately seeking your approval anymore. I'm a woman who understands her worth isn't determined by your recognition of it. My mother stood as well, dabbing at her eyes. We should go. Think about what we've asked. Please. I've given you my answer, I replied. The offer of therapy and temporary housing stands. Anything beyond that would be enabling patterns that need to change. I walked them to the door, Einstein still at my side. As they stepped onto the porch, my mother turned back. I am proud of you, Amber, she said quietly. I should have said it more. I should have stood up for you. The words I had longed to hear for decades now felt hollow, tainted by the circumstances that had prompted them. Still, I nodded in acknowledgement. Thank you for saying that. I hope you'll accept the help I've offered. Maybe we can build something new from here, something healthier. But it has to start with honesty and accountability, not money. After they left, I stood in the doorway watching their rental car disappear down the hill. David came up behind me, wrapping his arms around my waist. "You okay?" he asked softly. "I don't know," I admitted. Part of me wanted to just write the check to make them go away. Another part wanted to slam the door in their faces. "I'm not sure if what I did was right." "It was true to who you are," he said. "Compassionate but with clear boundaries." That's the woman I married. Later that afternoon, I called Chelsea, needing to process the encounter with someone who understood the history. "They actually had the nerve to show up after 10 years and ask for money," she exclaimed, outraged on my behalf. "They did," I confirmed. "And the strange thing is, I'm not even angry. I just feel sad. Sad for them, sad for what could have been, sad that even now, they don't really see me." "But you see yourself clearly," Chelsea pointed out. "And that's what matters most." That evening, as David and I hosted our regular Sunday dinner with our chosen family, Chelsea and her partner, Marcus, and his boyfriend, David's sister and her husband, I looked around the table at these people who loved me authentically, who celebrated my successes and supported me through challenges, who saw me for exactly who I was and valued me for it. In the end, I realized, family isn't defined by blood or obligation. It's created through choice and nurtured through mutual respect and genuine affection. The people who had contributed to my DNA had given me life, but these people around my table had shown me how to live it fully, authentically, joyfully. I raised my glass in a toast. To family, the one we choose and the one that chooses us every day. As glasses clinked and smiles were exchanged, I felt a profound sense of peace. The wounded child who had once desperately sought validation from people incapable of giving it had grown into a woman who understood that true family transcends biology. It's found in connections built on love, respect, and mutual support. Whether my parents would accept the help I'd offered remained to be seen. Whether we'd ever build a healthy relationship was uncertain. But I knew with absolute clarity that regardless of what happened with them, I was whole. I was loved. I was enough. And that knowledge, hard-won through years of pain and healing, was worth more than any mansion or any fortune I could ever acquire. Thank you for joining me on this journey. If you've ever struggled with family relationships or had to build your own support system, I hope my story reminds you that you're not alone. Family is who loves you, not just who's related to you. Let me know in the comments if you've had to create boundaries with family members and how that went for you. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and share if this resonated with you. Remember, you are enough, just as you are.